I'm Matthew Lynall. I'm a professor in the School of Management at Purdue University and director of our Experiential Learning and Management Consulting program. So in my pre-academic career, I was a management consulting partner with Ernst & Young, which is now part of Capgemini. So I'm going to focus on our course-based experiential programs and particularly the challenge of getting faculty and institutional buy-in. So the two courses within our Experiential Learning Initiative, which has become known as ELI on Purdue's campus, are Management Projects and Lean Launchpad. So in the Management Projects course, graduate students undertake semester-long consulting engagements for their project sponsors, and whereas Lean Launchpad is an experiential, evidence-based entrepreneurship course based on the customer development methodology developed by Steve Blank out of Stanford University, and we also use this in programs supported by the National Science Foundation and the National Institutes of Health for the commercialization of their funded research. But I'm going to focus mainly on the Management Projects course as we go forward. So next slide. So when we established ELI, the Objectives course began with the students and providing them with the opportunity to internalize and integrate their classroom learning, and also, since we're primarily a STEM, a science, technology, engineering, and mathematics university, to interact with graduate students and faculty from our STEM colleges and schools. As I'm sure you've all experienced, these activities are becoming essential elements of an MBA program, as Andrew mentioned earlier. But we're also finding that STEM graduate students increasingly value these as useful preparation for engineering and scientific roles in industry, as entrepreneurs, and in academia. For the university as a whole, ELI is a vehicle for engagement with our alumni and corporate partners, and also in commercializing Purdue's research and intellectual property. And then fourthly, our corporate partners really view these activities as integral to their talent acquisition programs on campus, as well as an opportunity to participate in the processes for transitioning our research and intellectual property into useful application. So on the next slide, we've just passed our 5th year anniversary for ELI, and we've had some good success with a fairly wide variety of projects, satisfied clients, and involvement of faculty and students across Purdue. However, the mandate for our School of Management is to become better aligned with Purdue's STEM mission and strengths. And so this means transitioning particularly management projects from a management-centric program to one that includes a good portion of interdisciplinary projects in which the business and managerial elements may be supplementary to the issue being addressed. So as an example, a couple of years back, our MBA students conducted a project for a large-scale solar power installation, but they focused purely on the financial model and business case. Whereas right now we have one project underway which has a multidisciplinary team drawn from management, from engineering, and from technology. And they're addressing the technology selection, the design, the configuration, as well as the business case for a solar power generating installation. So this is a broader and really a much richer experience for the student team. So we kind of characterize our transition that we're in the process of going through in 3 stages. So our stage 1, where we started, in which we really had traditional business-oriented projects addressed by MBA teams, and so that's where we started. Stage 2, in which we've got business issues with a technology component, but they're still addressed by MBA teams, but drew on Purdue STEM resources external to the team. And our 3rd stage, which includes business and technology-oriented projects, which are addressed by a fully integrated team of MBA and STEM graduate students. And so we're between kind of stages 2 and 3 right now. Now, Lean Launchpad is a kind of a different beast and a recent introduction, but from day one, and this alternates between developing startups in healthcare and life sciences in the fall and other vertical markets in the spring. And this is targeted at master's and PhD students in STEM disciplines, along with MBA students. But I'm going to focus more on the management projects as we go forward. So on the next slide, the engagement of faculty, for both management projects and Lean Launchpad, we found that attracting students and forming teams across campus has been very time-consuming and resource-intensive. So EduSource's software platform is going to help us greatly in managing the logistics of a campus-wide program connecting students, sponsors, and projects. But the challenge I'd like to touch on for the balance of my presentation is getting the rest of the campus on board, the faculty and their academic homes. Actually, sometimes it feels more like castles rather than homes, complete with unscalable walls and moats and cauldrons of boiling oil. But that may be just us. So in our STEM colleges and schools, we have over 1,000 tenured and tenure-track faculty who direct the research and course requirements of our graduate students. And so over the past few years, we've developed quite a few individual champions amongst the STEM faculty. These are the early adopters who are flexible enough to give their graduate students sufficient latitude to participate in both management projects and Lean Launchpad. But we feel that a sustained and scalable program really requires the institutional support of their academic homes. So next slide. So engaged faculty is essential, and we're getting to understand their research areas, their course content and curricula to help identify projects and leverage the knowledge and capabilities that our graduate students are acquiring. And so we count on them to promote ELI to students and colleagues, advise the students' teams both formally and informally when approached, and helping the students draw upon the concepts and tools and frameworks that they've learned in class. And in particular, their involvement in project development is essential, particularly if we're to provide projects where the core solution is technology-oriented as opposed to just within the business and management discipline. And then we need the senior faculty to work with us and their school's graduate committees to have both the management projects course and the Lean Launchpad courses included in the graduate program plan of study. So on the next slide, I've listed the faculty selling points, and I'm sure most of these are common to the programs in your institutions. I think the greatest challenge that we're encountering right now is inclusion into each STEM course curriculum or the formal plan of study for graduate students. So our engineering program, for example, has a long history, and courses have accumulated over time to form a very crowded curriculum. And old courses don't die, they just fade away, but they stay on the books. So actually we still have some courses taught by deceased faculty, which presents some grading problems. So there's a fair amount of pushback due to the perceived dilutive effect of adding a 3 to 4 credit course to the existing curriculum. And then another challenge is addressing the quantitative and technical content criteria for STEM courses. So for management projects, aside from attention to project scope and deliverables, we incorporate a more rigorous hypothesis-based methodology and bi-weekly content classes on subjects such as consulting methods, problem solving, primary and secondary data collection and analysis, project management, presenting, storytelling, team development, and so on. On the next slide, this diagram kind of illustrates the long road to broad faculty buy-in. While we could rely on focusing on the receptive and early adopters and build from there, we feel this is too slow for our purpose, and we want to accelerate the process. And while this process is never as clean and linear as this chart might suggest, I do find it helpful in keeping in mind the stages that each individual and organizational unit needs to progress through. And like Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's well-known stages of grief, this is seldom a one-way journey, and each stage may need to be revisited several times before we actually get people to that institutionalization stage. So on the next chart, as a managed process, the tracking is important, and this just illustrates on a sort of high level basis, and probably overly optimistic in some areas, but I think we're quite pleased with the progress that we've had to date, and we're very excited to see the gradual transition from a management-centric to a university-wide initiative. So that concludes my presentation, and so if there are any questions that have come up, I'm happy to take those right now, David.
Matthew, one question that was asked was, you mentioned integrating existing faculty course or experiential projects, and I assume you mean into the ELI, but the question is, how do you treat that? Did you take existing pieces and integrate them into the ELI, or did they continue outside of the ELI?
Well, the two things with respect to courses. One is, as we've dealt with each of the STEM schools, is getting a good understanding of their curriculum, so we understand the content that the students are walking away with, and then using those to shape the scope and deliverables of the project so that they can leverage that knowledge. The other side of it is we're trying to encourage as many faculty, both in the School of Management and elsewhere, to incorporate experiential activities in their existing courses. So maybe there's a project component or some interaction engagement with industry. And so supporting their efforts, since we've a focal point for many of the connections with industry, and have some reasonable experience in terms of identifying and scoping projects, as well as integrating them into courses, just really help accelerate and smooth the process for faculty that want to do that.
Matthew, we have time for one more question, and it is, what level of support do you have from senior university administration?
Yeah, great question. A lot of support. In fact, it's easier getting the senior administration support than it is for faculty. Faculty are very attached to their own particular areas and turfs, whereas the administration certainly has an ability to stand back and look at the overall program, and so from whether it's the deans of the schools or other more senior administration, they clearly recognize the importance of this activity, and in our case, in particularly the importance of shifting it to be more of a university-wide program where we can bring together students from disciplines to work together. So I've never had any difficulty at the senior level, but also recognize that in a university environment, even deans have limited ability to actually get faculty to change their behavior. So we still have to work with individual faculty, but it's nice to know that we have the backup and support of the senior administration.